So I'm sharing my screen with you. Let me know when you see something on the screen, please. Whenever you see the screen, ladies and gentlemen. We see, fantastic. Okay, so week number 11, right? So it's been 11 weeks since we started this Q&A session, okay? So as you know, there are two different parts to it. In the first part, we will have 20 questions. I'm going to ask those questions. You're going to answer those. We'll also discuss what is the right answer, right? And in the second part, which is we're going to take a short 10 minutes break. And then when we'll come back, I'll open up the platform for the queries or the questions that you might have. So if you have any question, you can ask me. I'll be more than happy to reply to those. Okay. So just to start with the first part, we'll start with the questions, right? So the 20 questions now. Starting with the question number 1. Let's start with that. So the question 1 is, you are managing a cross-border IT implementation project with a multinational company. During the execution phase, a key European stakeholder insists that the new GDPR, so the Global General Data Protection Regulations, that is what GDPR stands for, requirements must be included immediately. Meanwhile, a US-based sponsor argues that compliance work should not consume the project's limited budget and the timeline. The project team is confused about which requirement to prioritize because implementing the GDPR will delay the 2 critical deliverables, while ignoring it risks the legal non-compliances. The steering committee is unavailable for 2 weeks. The senior management has asked you to keep the project moving. What should you do first? All of them are the correct answers, but what you should do first. Read the question again and then answer. What do you think? Delta, the first answer that I got is Delta. Bravo and Charlie. I need one answer. All of them are the correct actions, by the way. What you should do first. That's the key. Charlie. Okay. Let's see the answer. The answer is actually Bravo, right? It is Bravo. Why it is Bravo? You tell me the answer. You tell me the reason why it's Bravo. I told you rule number 1 of answering the questions during the examination. And the rule is analyze, action, right? So first you perform the analysis, then you take an action. If you talk about escalation, that's an action, right? Implementing GDPR is an action, right? Negotiations without the analysis, how would you do that? Correct? So the correct answer to this question is Bravo. You review the change management process and analyze the impact first of the GDPR requirements before the escalation. Okay, that's the answer to the question number 1, ladies and gentlemen. Question number 2, a large infrastructure project is in month 14 of a 24-month duration. During the latest earned value review, you find that the earned value is $12 million. The actual cost is $11 million, and the planned value is $14 million. The project sponsor insists that because the project is under budget, everything is fine. However, your team is worried about the potential penalties for being late, as certain milestones are critical for the government approvals. The stakeholders are pressurizing you to explain the situation in simple terms without too much jargon. What is the most accurate statement to communicate? Answer the question. What are the two parameters that you're going to check? Tell me for this. I'll tell you. One should be the SPI. The other one should be the CPI. That's the hint. Earned value divided by the planned value. Earned value divided by the actual cost. Now answer the question. Debashish again goes Delta. So Rochinan gives Bravo. Vinod gives Bravo. Yes. Hey buddy, how are you today? Yes, gives Bravo. What about rest of us? Jabbar. I don't know who's iPhone 13 Pro. What's your name? I see you as iPhone 13 Pro. Abdul. Abdul goes Bravo. Abdullah. Abdullah is iPhone 13 Pro. All right, let's do it. So what's the earned value? Earned value is 12 divided by the planned value. What's the planned value? Planned value is 14. So that is 0.82 something, right? The CPI is earned value 12 divided by the actual cost, which is 11. So that's going to be 1 point something. Okay. So that means you are behind on the schedule and ahead on the cost. All right. So the answer is travel. So 0.86 is the SPI and 1.09 is the CPI. So that simply tells you that your project is behind the schedule but cost efficient. So Bravo is the answer. If you understood that, please say I on the chat. If you know why the Bravo is the answer. Yes, all righty. That was the question number 2. Question number 3, ladies and gentlemen. A global pharmaceutical project has been running for 6 months. Multiple country teams report confusion about the responsibilities, overlapping tasks, and disagreements over who signs off on the deliverables. The conflict escalates, consuming the weekly meetings. The key milestones are slipping. The team members blame unclear leadership and the poor documentation. You review the project artifacts and find that while a resource management plan was drafted, it was never fully socialized. The several roles were assumed but not formally assigned. Which process should you revisit first? Which process you should revisit first to resolve this? Answer that. Good question, right? What about rest of us? Everybody agrees it should be Bravo. Tell me why. Unclear leadership, proper documentation. When you checked, the resource management plan was drafted but never socialized. All right, I'll give that to you. The answer is Bravo. Why? Because if you see why there is confusion, the confusion is about the responsibilities. People do not understand what they're supposed to do, right? Overlapping tasks, disagreements on who signs off the deliverables, again, a sign of confusion. What you need to do, go back to the resource management plan, check and re-clarify those roles responsibilities. We actually talked about that during our classes many times. Yeah, when we were talking about leadership, team management, all of those things, especially in lesson number 4, lesson number 5. Question number 4, ladies and gentlemen. Your project involves developing a cloud-based payment platform in a country with strict regulation frameworks. During the risk identification, you flagged possible regulatory delays. Now, 6 months later, the government has changed the compliance guidelines, and your legal advisors warns of potential multi-month delays if you proceed without the proper clearance. The client insists the systems must go live within the year, or the financial losses will be catastrophic. The sponsor suggests creating a workaround, but you fear this could lead to the penalties. Which is the most effective strategy to reduce the project's exposure? Good question. Tell me. The country has very strict regulatory framework. So it's a threat, right? And there are 5 different strategies that we talked about to manage the threat. Okay. What are those? Escalate, avoid, transfer, mitigate, accept. These are the 5, right? Now tell me the answer. I just gave you a hint. So the best strategy to any threat is always to mitigate. If it is, if there is a possibility that you can mitigate that risk, right? That should be the approach. You accept the risk if that's a very small risk. So Bravo goes out. You cannot accept that. No, Jawar, no, girl, you cannot accept this, right? It's a big risk. It's a 4 months delay. It's a big risk. So you accept only the small ones. When you avoid a risk, It's a guarantee that this is going to come around again. Okay. You take avoidance only on those risks which are so catastrophic that you are even willing to take a smaller risk to avoid the bigger risk. That's not the situation here. So the right, you cannot transfer that, of course, right? You have to mitigate that risk. And that's where you need to hire. Why not transfer? Because you transfer those risks that you think could be managed by the third party to bear the consequences. Now tell me, if you transfer that risk to a compliance agency, will they bear that 4 months of delay? Will they pay the penalties for that? That is what transfer is, right? So we took the example of transfer in the other day in which we took life insurances. So if you talk about the life insurance, just in case that risk materializes, God forbid something happens to me, then they are paying that money to my family members. That's transferring. Okay. So they are accountable for that financial risk that would be on my family if I'm not around. So you can transfer that risk and they'll cater to it. But here the risk is multi-months delay. Will they bear that? Yeah, that's going to come back to you only, Kumar. All right. So that's the question number 4. Good questions, right? Question number 5. In a construction project, one of the community stakeholder claims that the newly built structure does not reflect the design approved during the planning, right? The client is worried that the rework may be necessary, while the architect insists that the approved design was followed. So the architect is saying we followed the same design. The customer says something else, right? You are caught between conflicting claims. The project sponsor demands the proof, quote unquote, that the design specifications were respected before any costly rework is approved. What should you review first? You have to review all of these 4 things. What should you review first? What was an RTM, by the way? You all are doing alphas, the requirement traceability matrix. What was that? Now I've got Bravos and Deltas. Jawad gives Delta. Good morning. How are you today? Stavit joins the party. She also gives Delta. Good morning, Stavit. How are you doing? Abdul gives Charlie. All the answers, right from alphas to Bravos to Charlies and Deltas, right? I see all of them now. Yeah, okay. So the answer is actually alpha. That's the RTM. But that's why I asked you the question. What is RTM? Tell me what's the RTM. What is the information that an RTM contains? It contains all the traces of a requirement right from the time when that requirement was given to the time it got delivered and accepted by the customer, right? So right from who gave the requirements, when that requirement was given, what was the requirement identification number, right? When you captured that as a part of the deliverable, under which section you captured that as a part of the deliverable. Now, this is what is happening here because uh, the designers are saying that it is as per the design. So that information is also in the RTM, and the requirements which were given by the stakeholders, those are also in the RTMs. So when you check all the traces that you see, Mr. Customer, we captured your requirement. This is where we entered that into WPS. That is where it was a part of the design. That is where it was a part of the execution, right? So we actually delivered what you asked for. So that is the solution to this question because the stakeholder is saying it is not as per the design, right? So you need to show him the traces that you see. Here you approved it. Here it was a deliverable. Here it was a part of the design. You approved the design, sir. And that is what we have done. That every project has RTM. Ideally, you should have an RTM. You remember when we were talking about the requirements the other day, Stavit? During the class, I said it's a good document. Please explain why not the other options. The CCB has nothing to do with that because there is no change request, is there? You will generate the change request, Kumar, once you agree that yes, there is a change required. The project charter has nothing to do with this whole scenario because the project charter is an authority document which authorizes the existence of the project and authorizes you to work as a project manager. That has absolutely nothing to do with this. The scope management plan is just a document that explains how the scope was defined, how it was validated, and how it was controlled, right? Again, not relevant to this question. The only correct answer that you see if you go into the process of elimination, that is alpha. That's why. Correct. Question number 6, ladies and gentlemen. At the start of your project, there were 6 identified stakeholders. After the kickoff, additional stakeholders from marketing, compliance, finance, and the customer support are added, bringing the total to 10. You are concerned about the increasing complexity of the project as misunderstandings are already causing the delays. By now, by now, how much have communication channels increased? Okay. How many channels got increased? Answer that question. Forty-five channels got increased. Okay, that's interesting. What's the formula to calculate the channels? N into n minus 1. Is that the full formula? Or should that be divided by 2? All right. The answer is actually Bravo, because initially when you had 6 stakeholders, you had 6 into 530 divided by 2 equals to 15. Now you have 10, 10 into 990 divided by 245. The difference is 30 new channels of communication. Anybody who said Bravo is the correct answer. All right. I told you, you will have questions in the examination from the communication channels during the class. I told you that. Moving on to question number 7. You're leading an agile product development team that delivers increments every 2 weeks. So the sprint time is 2 weeks. The product backlog contains items with high technical risks, moderate business value, and others with high business value but low risk. During the sprint planning, the product owner is conflicted about what to prioritize first, as both the business and the technical stakeholders are pushing their agendas. What should guide the prioritization? Answer. Think about it. Read the question again. The answer may surprise you, I can tell you that. But there is a tussle between alpha and Bravo, right? All right. The correct answer is alpha, highest business value items, even if low risk. Why is that? Why is that? What I said about 100 times during the class, what is at the core of the HR project management? 100 times at least during my classes. What's at the core of an HR project? Deliver the value early than later. Did I say that? The whole idea is to deliver the value and to deliver the value early than later. That's the answer. That's why alpha is the answer. Correct? Question number 8. A team member complains they are receiving conflicting instructions, one from the functional manager and another from you, the project manager. The individual is unsure which task takes priority. Upon investigation, you discover that the project members are still spending 80% of their time in the functional department and 20% on your project. Which organizational structure are you operating in? Lesson number 2 talks about the organizational structures. If you have read the documents that I told you to read, you started reading the 11th edition yet? All of you who are preparing for the examination? Yes? It's a question. There's somebody's making a graffiti on my screen. That's a live recorded session that goes on to the YouTube. Avoid doing it. All right. So the answer is a functional organization. Because in functional organizations, the project manager has very less powers, and most of the powers are with the functional manager, and that is why he's dictating the activities to those. Now, it's an organization where, if you talk about the functional organization, these are mostly those organizations who work more on operations and less on projects, and that's why they don't have project managers, right? Project manager is a multi-hat role there, all right? So somebody from the team will work as the project manager, multi-hatted, you know, managing his roles, responsibilities, and also the roles, responsibilities of the project. So in those situations, the project manager has very less parts, all right? That's why, and this is what the question is reflecting here. That's why the answer is delta. It's a functional organization. Question number 9, ladies and gentlemen. You are preparing the procurement documents for outsourcing specialized software development. The client insists that vendors must provide a very specific design approach and performance matrices before finalizing the vendor selection criteria. You realize that one document will clarify exactly what the vendor must deliver. What should you define first? Tell me. You realize that one document will clarify exactly what vendor must deliver. If you were in my class, you cannot miss out onto this question. If you were in my class when we talked about procurement, you cannot give a wrong answer to this question. I'm pretty sure about it. We specifically talked about that point during the class. All right. The answer is what you thought, absolutely, except of Deepak. Good morning, Deepak. Hey, Deepak, you were in my classes? Yeah. How did you miss that out, buddy? No? Okay, that's fine. So people who were from my classes didn't know what was the first ever document that we gave to our project manager, whoever project manager that we chose in our class. That was the statement of work, all right? What's the statement of work? The statement of work contains high-level deliverables to give an idea that what the vendor or the performing organization needs to deliver. Now, when it comes to the procurement, we have procurement statement of work. Remember, I used to write procurement in front of that statement of work. So when we were talking about the documentation, the procurement documentation, we specifically talked about it. That's the first thing that clarifies to the vendor or the contractor that what is expected from this project, right? And then you go for the source selection criteria, risk allocations, contract types. Contracts is the last thing, right? Absolutely last thing. So the answer is bravo. Question number 10. Your project's critical path includes an activity with zero float that is now delayed due to a vendor issue. The sponsor pressures you to fix it quickly as the penalties are severe for late delivery. The project the team proposes fast tracking the other activities while the vendor assures the resolution in 2 weeks. What should you do first? Your first thing that you should do. And that should be an easy pick, actually. Okay, Randy, we need one answer, buddy. One answer, not two. Okay, so the answer should be bravo. Perform the schedule impact analysis to evaluate the alternative. Analysis, then the action. Now you know that. Now you know that. This is 11th week talking about the same stuff. So now you know. You do the analysis, you take an action. Okay. That makes it easy, right? That makes it easy to answer the question. Question number 11, ladies and gentlemen. You are asked to provide a cost estimate for the project that has only limited historical data and incomplete requirements. The sponsor needs to figure quickly to ensure funding approval. Which estimation method should you use? All right. Limited historical data and incomplete requirements. The sponsor needs a figure quickly to secure funding approval. In situations where you have limited historical data and when you have incomplete requirements, the best estimation technique to go ahead is the analogous estimation. With little detail, analogous estimation based on the similar past projects is the most appropriate. Why I cannot go parametric, tell me? Why I cannot go parametric? No details. Okay. Why not bottom up? Because for that, you need to have a very well-defined WBS. Unless you have that, you cannot go with this, right? And why not 3 points estimation? Because for that, you need multiple of these data points, right? The only possible thing that you can do is to do analogous here. Question number 12. Two senior system architects are in a heated conflict, hot-headed, right? During the design meetings, each pushing their own approach. The dispute is creating divisions in the team, delaying the deliverables, and lowering the morale. You fear the argument may escalate further if not resolved. Which conflict resolution technique is most sustainable here? Most sustainable technique. That should be a very easy pick for you if you recall that last slide of the lesson number 4, which contains the conflict resolution approaches. Whenever the question talks about sustainability, that means it is looking at a permanent solution. There are only 2 approaches that gives you the permanent solution. One is called the forcing. 2 is called collaboration. So even if forcing was an option, it's a will-lose option, correct? So the only possible answer here is to collaborate. Is the win-win solution that resolves the root issues. I explained them in details using the examples from us only. So whoever was in the class, I'll take 2 people, I'll tell them that there is a conflict going on and explain all of those 4 or 5 techniques, right? So the answer is collaboration, or we also call it confrontation. We also call it problem solving, fancy names. Question number 13. During the execution, a stakeholder approaches you informally, requesting an additional feature because it will take only a few days and would make the product more marketable, right? The team is tempted to implement it to please the stakeholders, but you worry about the scope creep. What should you do? It's like, hey, buddy, can you please include this thing? That's that scenario. Hey, Sachin, you're doing so many things for us. Can you please include that deliverable? It takes only 2 days. Come on, buddy. You can do that much, right? So that is that scenario. The answer is alpha. Initiate a change request through the formal process. Go to integrated change control. How many times we use the ICC process? Hundreds of times during our discussion. Everything should go through the ICC process, and that is a predictive methodology project. So yes, the answer is alpha. Question number 14, ladies and gentlemen. During the risk management workshop, executives wants to see a visual representation of how the probability and the impact are mapped for the identified risks. They want to know which risks should receive the most attention at a glance. Which tool should you use? Or that should be an easy question for anybody who sat in my class. Should be a very easy question for them. How they are mapped for the identified risk. Okay, so what analysis are they expecting, the qualitative or the quantitative? Tell me. Is it the qualitative analysis that you're trying to look at or the quantitative? Qualitative. If you know that bit, that they are looking at the qualitative risk analysis, that's a fairly easy question then. Because you see, Monte Carlo is a quantitative analysis. Sensitivity is the quantitative. Tornado diagram is quantitative. The only qualitative risk analysis tool is the probability and impact matrix. That should be your answer. Correct? All righty. Question number 15. Your project has a budget at completion of $500,000. After 6 months, the earned value is $250,000. The actual cost is $300,000. The finance manager insists that the costs are on track because the actual spending is below half of the BAC. What is the CPI here? All right, tell me, what's the CPI here? Good morning, Walid. How are you today, my brother? How are you doing? What's the formula of the CPI again? Earned value divided by the actual cost. 250,000 divided by 300,000. How much do you get? 250,000 divided by 300,000. Do the maths. Do the maths. How much do you get? The answer is 0.83. 250,000 divided by 300,000 equals to 0.83, right? That's the CPI for you. Question number 16, ladies and gentlemen. The sponsor insists on delivering the project earlier due to the market pressure, but scope must remain unchanged. Cut in quality is not an option. You are reviewing the schedule compression techniques. Which approach is the best? No, why not alpha? What's wrong with the alpha? Why can't you go alpha? Tell me. Why can't you go alpha? Alhamad gives alpha, actually. Delay the is that the reason? Because you're not reading what the question is asking. The question says schedule compression technique. There are only two as per the PMI. What are those? Compression and the fast tracking. Are these the two? So that's the only schedule compression technique that you see in the answer. Okay. Resource leveling is not a schedule compression technique. Reserve analysis is not schedule compression. Monte Carlo is not the schedule compression. The only available option is fast tracking. Shortens the schedule by overlapping the activities without reducing the scope. And that is also the only option because that's the only the schedule compression technique, which is listed in these four answers. Okay. Question number 17, ladies and gentlemen, you are updating your stakeholder engagement strategy. One executive is extremely powerful, but only marginally interested in day-to-day project details. This is something that we discussed many times during the class, so please do not give me a wrong answer to this one. You want to ensure their needs are properly managed. Which attribute matters the most for determining the effort to satisfy them? Come on. Extremely powerful, but only marginally interested in day-to-day project details. Are you sure? Think again. Okay, I give that to you. It is delta. The power dictates how much effort is required in the power interest grid. The 2D matrix is. The 2D matrix is. So anybody who said delta is correct, actually. Question number 18. You are reviewing the contract options for outsourcing the system development. The vendor proposes a cost plus percentage contract, cost plus percentage, right? Arguing it ensures flexibility. You are concerned about the financial risk that poses. Which contract type places the highest risk on the buyer? Highest risk on the buyer, the safest for the vendor. Which contract type places the highest risk on the buyer? So that is cost plus percentage of the cost. Because whatever cost that the vendor is spending, that percentage of the cost needs to be paid by you. So if that goes very high, you still have to pay. So the vendor is making margins, right? So he's very safe. He's earning more money. So the more material that he's, the amount of money that he's spending on material resources or the human resources, right? The material cost and the labor cost, you're paying a percentage of that as his profit, the vendor's profit. So the answer is bravo. Cost plus percentage of the cost is the most dangerous contract for the buyer. It is safest for the seller, right? Okay, tell me, which one is the most dangerous for a seller? Which one is most dangerous for a seller? Not from these, not from these. That option is not available here. Otherwise, telling you, asking you. Which contract type? The firm fixed price contract. The firm fixed price contract. You give me 4,000, I give you four walls, nothing above, nothing below. That's a very dangerous contract. You remember that earned value example that we did during the classes on the last day? Remember that? The earned value analysis. But that was the same scenario, right? So you pay me 4,000, I give you four walls, and look what happens. All right. Question 19, ladies and gentlemen. Your client demands to see the document that formally authorizes the project and clarifies measurable project objectives and the criteria for success. The client insists that without it, you cannot justify continued investment. Which document should you? Anybody who was in my class knows the answer. Anyone who was in my class. I kept talking about it like 100 times during the classes. What's the answer? Everybody knows that, isn't it? That is called the project charter, the document that authorizes the existence of the project and also authorizes you as the project manager so that you could utilize the organizational resources to do the project work, correct? That's Charlie. At times when I'm writing the questions, I just keep thinking about that, what I taught you during the class, and then I try and map a question, which aligns to that concept. But then I believe that was made too straightforward for you guys. Okay, question number 20. You are coaching a new agile team. Some executives insist on directive leadership, while the others argue for strong control. The team, however, is demotivated by command style management and wants empowerment. Which leadership style best suit the agile? Easy question. I thought that was the last one, so let me just make it easy. What's the best style of leadership in agile project management in general? Forget about this question in general. The servant leadership, right? Did I tell you that during the examination, you should read the question as a servant leader, not as a project manager? Did I tell you that? If you just follow that one, you know, if you just keep that one thing in your mind, you'll be able to answer more than half of those questions easily. 90 plus questions just by, considering or reading the question as the servant leader, not as the project manager. Okay. Those are the 20 questions. Give me your scores. Just be honest with me. What's your score? Johan, 19, 18, 15, Devashish. Yeah, I saw a few wrong answers from you, buddy. 17, 11, 14, 14 out of 23 questions miss. Okay, you joined late, Suresh. Those three questions were big scenarios, the first three questions, big scenarios. Okay. So I'm trying to keep a mix of tough questions, easy questions, moderate questions. I'm trying to keep a mix of that. Not making super tough, all the 20 questions, not making super easy. Just trying to balance them out because this is how the exam will come. A few of them will be very easy questions. Few of them will be very, very tough. Okay. How many people we have? Oh, 23 people. So that's a good number. Yes, it's recorded. Journal it. Yes, Walid. It will go on the YouTube channel. Maybe this week. It will go onto that channel. The IMC certifications. Okay. So you can always go back and check those. All right. Good questions, right? Okay. So that was the first leg of the session. Now let's take a break, 10 minutes break, and we're going to come back and then I will open up the platform. If you have any questions, queries, or doubts, you can ask me those. If not, then we can close this. Okay, so to do that, let me just run the timer. Stay with me for a moment. Do you guys see the timer? Is this visible? Yes. When that hits 0, we're going to come back and continue. Thank you. Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen, are we all back after the break? Roll call, please. You guys read me? Yes, you are. The Vishesh. Alrighty. Let's start with the post-break session now. Now, in this second part, I'm going to answer any question that you might have related to the course, related to any query that you might have related to PMP examination, right? So please type your questions on the chat window. I'll read and answer them one by one. The platform is yours. Anybody has any question? I'm on. I am good. How are you doing? You missed out the questions? So were you the part of the first session, the pre-break session? Good questions today. Anybody who has any question? Yes, I want to ask about the final exam of the PMP. What's the question? Tell me the question. As I took a mock test, okay. So what's the question? What is the next step? Is it open? No, that's not an open book exam, my brother. No, it is not. So what you need to do is you need to, I don't know, you were the part of my sessions. So on the last day, I told you a strategy, right? That what you need to do. You need to prepare for 100 hours. And what exactly do you have to do in those 100 hours to read that one book that I suggested you, only that one book, cover to cover, and then write as many simulations. You have 6 of them available in our LMS, 3 mock tests and 3 full-length simulation exams. I'm working on the 4th simulation now. So by the end of this month, in the next couple of days, I'll be ready with that. And then we can upload that, right? So this strategy is fairly simple. You read the book, you attempt those questions, go through those recorded sessions if you have, if you were a part of my class. Which book was that? The version 6, the version, none of them. None of them. And I answered that question on the very first day that the exam, it doesn't come from the book. It doesn't. The exam comes from a document which is called the ECO, the Examination Content Outline, which is officially a combination of 10 different books, right? And when it comes to those 10 different books, I explained the whole ECO during the class, right? Every single one of those tasks and enablers. So just go through those recorded sessions. If you were a part of the live class, that's fantastic. Otherwise, just go through those. And then the book that I suggested, okay, let me just write that name on the chat window here. So that's the book that you need to read. I have given you a Google Drive link. You're going to have all of that material available in that link. So just read that one book, cover to cover, okay? And then attempt those simulation exams. Go and write the exam. You're going to pass that. So once I finish the simulation and make sure I understand most of the questions, who should I send for the final exam? You need to book the exam with the PMI, right? So go to the Pearson's website. Now, once you file the application, are you done filing the application yet, Ayman? So the PMI will review your application. Not yet, I think. Okay, so that's the first step. File the application. Are you a member of the PMI already? If not, then you take the membership first. Okay, so take the membership, file the examination, not the IMC, the PMI. Are you a member of the PMI? There's an annual fee of $129 for that. You pay that fee. Why I want you who I have to register first. Go to the pmi.org, the Project Management Institute.org, and there, yes, you become a member there because the membership is $129, but that gives you a discount during the exam fee. For the non-members, it is $555. For the members, it is $450, right? So that actually saves you $405, sorry. So that saves you $150 at the time of the examination. So it is a good deal actually. Now, when you pay $129, you get your own copy of the PMBOK, and you also get the exclusive access to the members area. That's where you may have the white papers, you may have case studies, you have the simulation questions as well, right, for the preparation. So it is worth taking. The membership is worth taking, I can tell you that, right? And once you become a member, then you file the application. The PMI will check that application and they'll give you a go ahead, maybe in a week's time, if your application doesn't fall into the audit, right? If it is in the audit, then the PMI will also inform you that your application has been picked for the audit. They're going to give you the instructions, follow those instructions to clear the audit, all right? And then you can book the examination. No, it's not mandatory. No, the membership is not mandatory at all. Why I suggest you? Because then eventually, what's the idea? The idea is to write the examination. Now, for writing the examination, for the non-members, the PMI charges $555, $555. And if you're a member, then they charge you $405. So that's a straight saving of $150. It saves $150 for you. So you are in a profit of $21 if you look at technically. So I won't have the certificate from the IMC and the PMI until I register. No. You can get the completion certificate, the 35 contact hour certification from us once you finish your training program and you write that simulation test. So if you're scoring qualifying, then the team will issue you that certificate. But then what would you do with that certificate? You need that certificate as a prerequisite to sit in the PMP examination, correct? Now, for that, you have to get yourself registered with the PMI or, file the application with the PMI and then write the exam. Okay. Any other benefit of the membership? You get your own copy of the PMBOK, your registered copy of the PMBOK, whatever the latest version. For now, it is 7, right? And we are hoping that we're going to have the version 8 maybe the next month. We already got a review copy. We are reviewing it, right? So, yes. So the benefits are the membership benefits. 1, it saves you money. 2, it gives you those white papers. You may have case studies there. You have a few of those simulation question tests, questions as well that you can practice on, right? Exclusive access to the members data. Good. I have to submit my simulation with applying for the examination. You submit the IMC simulation so that you get the 35 contact hour certificate, which is a prerequisite. All right, you have to have it to write the PMP exam later. And then you go to the pmi.org, get yourself registered, file the application. Once that application is approved, you book the exam and write the exam. These are the steps. Are we able to get the whole presentation if we become the PMI's member? The whole presentation, which presentation? The one that I used for explaining topics to you during the class? The one you use? Those are called instructor slides. I give you those slides, PMI is going to kill me, right? So, I cannot give you those slides. The PMI is going to kick me out of the organization. So no, I cannot do that. But what you can do is you can opt for a digital key, all right? Which is $60. There's a fee of $60. The PMI charges that fee. And then they give you the access to the student forum. Now on that forum, you have the PDFs of those presentations, okay? You get the PDFs. So yes, that's one benefit that you get. Yeah. Any other question, ladies and gentlemen? Any other question, anybody? My PMP application just got approved this morning. Congratulations on that. Go ahead, write the exam. Make me proud. Jan, any suggestions on key areas to focus to take the exam? Yeah. All right. You see, what do you think? From which area in the examination the toughest of the questions will come? What do you think, Deepak? So there is this perception that that should be from the scope and schedule and cost and quality, correct? That's not true. The areas to focus are risk, procurement. The toughest of the questions in the exams are from the procurement. Okay. So the risk, the procurement, communication, stakeholders. These are the four areas. Why? Because these are the most neglected areas of the whole project management. The project manager keeps focusing on scope and schedule and cost and quality, ignoring the risks, stakeholder engagement, communication, procurement, right? Although these are as important as the other areas. And that is why the people will feel a difficulty in answering the questions when the questions from these areas comes in the examination. So I would suggest to you, because I already explained scope, schedule, cost, quality inside out to you during the classes, if you recall, right? Although we talked about all the areas, but the toughest of the questions are from these four areas that I just talked about: stakeholder communication, procurement, and the risk. Okay. Read those areas, prepare on those areas, and that's literally your guarantee to pass the examination. Deepak. So we need to take the mark or the simulation exam to obtain the PMP certification, not the PMP, the PDU certification, the 35 contact hour certification, Jawar, which we, the IMC, will give you. All right. Once you have that, it's a prerequisite to sit in the real exam. Recall the first day when I was talking about those set of parameters that you need to satisfy in order to sit in the PMP exam. One of those parameters was 35 contact hours of training or education, right? Or a CAPM certification. Now, since you are not a CAPM certified, you need that 35 hours of project management education, that certificate I'm talking about. So you take it from us, and then you go and write the PMP. Any other question? I thought fill in the form is enough. The form from the IMC, the form from the PMI. Which form? The IMC, yes. So if you have attended all the classes, right? If you have a complete attendance with us, then the team will review your form and they will issue that certificate to you. If you missed out a few of these classes, in that case, you need to also write the simulation and pass it with 50% score. Does it contain the real PMI questions? The PMI never released any questions to the market, right? So you would never have the actual question that came in the PMP examination, but these are very similar to those. Very similar. Any tips for the application? Focus on the area that you have done, the work that you have performed during the project, rather than using the general statements. Try and use uh, you know, as many of those, what you can say, in the technical words that we discussed during the classes, just like project charter, identification of the stakeholders, the business case, the benefit management plan, the project scope statement. Start using those terminologies, right? Uh, a focus on what exactly is the work that we do during the initiation, what exactly do we do in plan, and divide your application into these 5 sections, right? And provide very clear objectives of what the project was, what are the objectives, and what you got as an output from there, right? So focus on those areas. Get it reviewed, send it back to the team, they'll review that application, and they can suggest you any changes if required. And then you file the application. Or you can simply ping me, I can send you a few of those samples. You can read those samples, go through this, write your own application. Yes. So Hadil is not here in the class today. Otherwise, Hadil's application has already been approved. And we just saw today, Joanne's application is also approved. So you can get in touch with Joanne. She was in your batch, I believe. And she can share her application with you. So you can just go through that application, make a, follow the same pattern to write yours. I'll share. Yes, yes. Fantastic. You can upload that here on the chat window if that's available with you, Shia, so that Jawar can download that. Jawar is a very sincere participant, never missed any classes. She's, I would really want to help her. No, she just finished the batch this Sunday, I guess. No, Jawar, is it Friday? Thursday? The last Thursday. Yeah. So yes, Shias is from my previous batches. Jawar, a very intelligent dude. I can tell you that. Any other question? Walid, Shias, Alhamad, anybody? Fantastic, Jawar. I missed the first question. Could you share that again? All right. First question. That's the first one. Dalamat. So the question is, you are managing a cross-border IT implementation project for a multinational company. During the execution phase, a key European stakeholder insists on the new GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations. This is what GDPR stands for. Requirements must be included immediately. Meanwhile, a US-based sponsor argues that the compliance work should not consume the project's limited budget and the timeline. The project team is confused about which requirements to prioritize because implementing the GDPR will delay two critical deliverables, while ignoring it risks the legal non-compliances. The steering committee is not available for the next 2 weeks. the senior management had asked you to keep the project moving, what should you do first? That's the question. The answer hides in that concept that I kept telling you right from the first day. First, you do the analysis, then you take an action. Alhamad. There is a section in the PMI application file and write about our project manager? Yes. So that is what the PMI application is all about. You write that when you claim that you've been working on projects for 3 years, if you were a grad, and 5 years if you were an undergrad, you need to write the details of those projects where you've been working on, right? For which organization you did those projects, what was the budget, what were the objectives, what did you do in that project? So yes, you have to. Kumar. Al-Hamad says Bravo is the answer. It is actually the answer. Yep, you're right. You do the review first, and then you take an action. Perform integrated change control process, the PICC process. Can you please go back to question 11? That's question 11. You are asked to provide a cost estimate for a project that has only limited historical data and incomplete requirements. The sponsor needs to figure quickly to secure the funding approval. Which estimation method should you use? You see, if you go by the process of elimination, that's an easy question to answer. Three points estimate. Are all four of these? Bottom-up analysis, for that you need a very well-defined WBS, right from the project scope statement to the control accounts, to the planning packages, to the work packages, and you move from bottom of the WBS tree towards the top of the WBS tree. So you do the estimations right at the work packages first, roll them back to the planning packages, further roll them back to the control accounts and to the project scope statement. That is called bottom-up analysis. For that, you need a very well-defined WBS, which is not available right now. So you cannot do the bottom-up. For 3 points estimate, you need the sample data from many different stakeholders. You don't have that either. So the beta distribution formula, the pessimistic plus optimistic plus 4 into most likely divided by 6. That's the beta distribution formula. But for that, you need to have the pessimistic, optimistic, and most likely values, which are not shown here. Analogous is the only possibility. Historical data analysis, right? So you have limited historical data, right? But you have historical data. Go into that, take the estimates from that, and proceed with the estimation for this project. The parametric estimation is when you use maths. So if I have to do, say, the wooden flooring on 400 square foot bedroom area, right? And I never did the wooden flooring, so there is nothing in my historical data. So when I ask somebody else did it, but it took them 1 day to do wooden flooring on 40 square foot area. So how much time should I keep for 400 square feet? 10 days. How did you get that? 400 divided by 40. That's maths, right? That is called the parametric estimation. Sarojana. Is there any one book where all the topics? Yes, I told you the name of that book already, Deepak. This book on the chat window. Yeah, that one book. Did you start reading that book yet? There's one of the best books available in the market, I can tell you that. Just started, yep. So when you read that, it will have everything based on the latest format of the PMP. I read that. It's a very nice book. And if you see during my classes, I talk about a lot of those points which actually matches that book, if you notice. So when you start reading it, you'll realize this. Are we done? Yep. I'm just looking at if you have any other questions. Otherwise, we can close the session for today. Do we have any other question, ladies and gentlemen? Guys, any other question? If no questions further, no? All righty. So we can wrap up for today. Thank you so much for joining in. And I'm planning another one, not the next week, but the next to next week, right? I'll send the registration link to all of your groups which you are a part of. Get yourself registered. Let's see you in the next session for the week number 12, right? I'll prepare another 20 questions and we'll do the discussion on those. Thank you so much. My name is Sachin. I shall see you in the next session. Thank you. God bless you. Bye-bye.